All right, cyber traders, welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of Traders Talk this Tuesday, February 23rd, shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Let's get a quick sound check to begin, make sure everybody could hear me loud and clear. And I'd like to welcome aboard for this edition all of our members streaming across social media, Facebook Live and YouTube. You folks certainly do the same. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear here. Great to see all of us live inside our trading room. Renzo, Jean, Kathleen, who I know who had a great morning so far. Judy, Amy, Gary, Tony, Phil, Wayne. All of our students joining us live. Great to see you all loud and clear. Perfect. All right. Should be good to go across social media. I'd like to welcome Mitch from Harrisonburg joining us on YouTube here. So without further ado, folks, let's hop right into the thick of things. My name is Josh Levitan for all of us streaming across social media. Should have started with that. I'm the senior instructor here at Cyber Trading University. You know, I've been trading since 2015. I've been with Fausto and CTU since late 2014 here. But nonetheless, for anyone that's joining us that has been a trader for a long amount of time, whether swing trader, forex, options, investor, or just day trader like us, it's very different between just reading charts and just following a stock as it's moving up and down on the chart versus reading level 3, the ECN book, reading time and sales along with it. So really quickly to begin, we have a whole lot to talk about here today with everything going on in the market, the big drop off back-to-back mornings and then the squeeze back up. But, really quick for all of us on social media that's just unfamiliar with this trading platform, you're going to see on the far right side here where I'm dragging across this program. It's called the TradeStation Matrix. This is the equivalent of what Fausto shows in his webinars as the NASDAQ book view or the NASDAQ total view. In fact, this shows a bit more. So this is what we primarily show since it's just integrated into the platform. Makes it easier. That's it. So I like to just explain that to begin. But nonetheless, though, we use level 3 in order to identify the larger levels of support and resistance that the chart bounces off of that you happen to see. So with that, we'll start by going over a few trades from this morning's pre-market watch list that Fausto put out. From there, the CTU morning watch list, how I ended up reacting to that list and what I did this morning myself, and what a few of our students did alongside me. So let's hop right into that. And, to begin, what I'll actually do is copy and paste the pre-market watch list, and then alongside that, the main watch list here. So, typically at 8 a.m. Eastern time, Fausto will post a pre-market list, just stocks early on within the pre-market hours that are moving off of news or, anything else otherwise. So this is what Fausto posted inside the live trading room earlier, a whole bunch of stocks, the airlines mainly, but we had CCIV, CTIB, AMC. So a lot of those we are pretty familiar with inside our trading room. We trade the airlines often. We've traded AMC frequently enough. We've traded SOS and Churchill CCIV. Not all of these stocks are tradable for all of our students, though. And at the same time, the faster a stock moves across the morning, it becomes untradeable. So to the point where I won't call it out, or Fausto won't even call it out himself. So that's where I say we have to try and filter this watch list. And then alongside this, of course, we have our main CTU watch list that we end up posting after 9 a.m. Of course, after Fausto finishes up the morning audio broadcast that he does, he ends up posting this watch list here. Pretty similar, CTIB, the airline stocks ended up remaining. A few others ended up joining, though, right? So, for instance, really quick, just as we just look, stock BBIG, it was on the main, morning watch list, so to say. This ended up popping after Fausto put out the pre-market list. So, at the time 9 o'clock came, of course, it was still pulling back at the time, ended up completely dumping off. But Fausto said, this still seems really active. There's a chance in which this could move back up, maybe make a lower high compared to what it did in the pre-market. But, it's still really tradable, still provides an opportunity. Things like this will, put on the main watch list after 8 o'clock. So really quick, let's just look at this to begin, because this is one that we did not really look to trade at all, certainly not after 9:30. So going into the market open, I'm not even going to look at the news here on this trade, folks. I'm sure one of us can copy and paste it, but needless to be said, it was pulling back going into the morning. It was trending down, even though it was still up big. But it's to say that as a stock is dropping, you're seeing more people sell and take profits. So naturally, you're going to see a lot of these orders on the bid. If you look on the far right side again in blue, that's the bid of level 3. So you're seeing a lot of those orders getting filled as the stock is dropping down. The question that you have to ask is, what happens if history repeats itself? meaning that although this stock is up off of news still, it made a pop after 8 o'clock Eastern. What if we happen to see the same type of selling that came in at some of these price levels here? Let's say once it broke down below support off the chart, I'm sure there was an order on the bid at $5.20. What happens after the market opens if this doesn't break above $5.20? If it fails to break higher from there? What happens if it makes a false breakout from there? So, that's just what happens here. It ended up, kind of consolidating within the first couple of minutes, ended up popping up a bit here, and then just dragged right back down. Once it re-broke, seemingly, it's easy to say it, but below this bar, like that was it, game over. This ended up just diving all the way down towards an eventual low off like 404. But you don't want to try and watch this, wait to make the bounce. First, if you hold your breath, it took a while for this to make its move. And then otherwise, you're going to miss opportunities that we called out, after 9:30 as well. Stocks from the main watch list like the airlines. The AAL trade, it dived off after 9:30. I certainly was watching this. I took a couple losses on this. Ended up making some money back, but I had a little difficult morning myself. Ended up seeing this move with the market after 9:30, but still provides great opportunity. You get stuck watching a stock like that BBIG just drop and drop and drop, and you can't short it. You're just missing opportunities on other trades. So it's easy for me to say this, but the second this broke down below 5 and really held 520, let's say there, you just move on to another trade. That's it. All right, so that's why I just kind of brushed this one off to begin, although it made the morning watch list there. So, the question remains though, at least, what stocks should we be watching right at the market open? Are we watching all of these stocks at 9:30, like every airline, and then alongside that, all of these others like the BBIG, CTIB, etc.? The answer is no. We can only watch so much as human beings, right? Myself included. So, what we teach in class is that we try and concentrate the morning watch list down to stocks that you're like comfortable with, stocks that are within your skill level, and even above that, stocks that you've consistently have made money in the past day trading. So let's just start with that to begin. For all of us live inside the trading room here, are there any stocks from this morning watch list? Not the pre-market one just yet, but from what Fausto posted as the CTU morning watch list. Are there any stocks there that you've consistently made money on? If the answer is no problem at all. We'll just go down to the next step in the process here. But this is how I like to start my concentration of these lists and everything else. So Alan wrote, hey, he does all right on AAL. So it would be easy to say then to Alan, then to Taz here in the chat board as well, you should certainly focus on AAL. Why would you not? If you do well on that trade, more often than not, I'm sure some losses sprinkled in, but if you can get a good read on it, if it has good spreads, good liquidity, if you're able to read the iceberg orders on it, let me just turn over to AAL here on the platform. Then, if that's the case, then why not just start with that? Why not make that be one of your 2 or one of your 3 or so, stocks out of everything that we put out there? And at the same time, really quick, quick little tip here. I hope that all of us should realize this, but if not, then it will just help you out that much better. But all of these airlines, unless if there's one coming out with like company-specific news, but much more often than not anyway, they'll tend to move together. They all make the same move. So AAL making the same move as Delta. One sharper of a drop off and move back up than another, but they're making the same move. So why would you seriously try and follow both at the same time? Unless if you're just using one as like a guide, to kind of see if that one makes a drop first, and then you end up, taking a trade on the other, following it that way. But nonetheless, though, Alan and Taz, AAL, that'll be one that we'll talk about here coming up. Now, outside of the morning watch list, we had our pre-market list. So same question, any from the pre-market watch list that we ended up doing well on in the past to the point where we just focus on that right away going into this morning? Any stocks from that pre-market list? We traded that SOS in the past, CCIV frequently, AMC. Taz says he does well on the CCIV. So again, that's the question we're asking here. Do you do well more often than not on these trades? If the answer is yes, then you should stick with those stocks. Myself, I love AMC. And, you might look at AMC at the as a on the daily chart and say that's a crazy move. It's way too volatile for me. Well, it became too volatile. But even here, when this was a $3-4 stock and squeezing up at the time as GameStop was, that made a pretty good move as a level 1 or 2 stock, as we would categorize it. Look at the spreads right now. Look at the liquidity. I'll be honest with you, I don't want to be like an ass here and like waste a profit. I am taking a profit right now on AMC, just so you folks know. I will go over this trade actually in just a moment. I'm getting out exactly on the bid. I just got filled at 17. I took exactly a 16-cent profit. So I'll actually go over this trade that I took. I just don't want to waste this profit. If it keeps moving up, God bless. But I told you folks from the get-go, this morning, it wasn't my best morning. I was still down going into Traders Talk. This actually put me over, believe it or not. Kind of killing two birds with one stone here, right? Now, I don't recommend for anyone to do that unless if you're a very, experienced day trader, let's say at least, you set your stops. I was watching this on another screen. But either way, getting back to AMC as a whole, this I do well on. Like I said, I just closed out a trade. So why would I not look to focus on this a lot more compared to the BBIG, compared to, some of the others on the watch list like VBLT or DWSN, RETO, which, I know that Alex here in our trading room said that he did pretty well on yesterday. Why would I focus on these trades if I've just never really traded them at all? It's not to say I do bad on them. It's just to say that I've never really, became familiar with these stocks before. They could be good moves, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So that's how you could block out the noise. A lot of stocks that we're calling out that may be making good moves, but if it's too volatile for you, or if it's just something that you're not as keen to trade compared to something else that you're looking at, then just block it out. It doesn't make sense to try and, scramble around and hop from stock to stock to stock to stock. You're going to waste your time. You're going to chase stocks. You're going to take trades from levels, or not even from levels. You're going to take trades in between levels and not look to make as much of a profit as you would want, or even worse, you end up taking a bit of a loss just because you're chasing and you're exposing yourself to more risk. So all in all, this morning, I buckled down on 4 stocks in total, and I only really focused, I seriously ended up trading 2. I focused on AMC, AAL. Myself, I focused on this CTIB trade as well. Ended up making a huge pop off of $4 going into the mid-morning. So we'll talk about that coming up. But, hey, this was a great stock to watch in pre-market. It was cheap. It has great spreads. Liquidity as well. Easy to read iceberg orders. It was moving up in pre-market, let alone as opposed to BBIG, which was dropping going into the open. So this was a great one to watch. And then alongside that, another one here, which was a little more volatile, but also one that made a really big move from the last couple of weeks. And obviously right now, trending back up pretty nicely, Canon. All right, so what do I do with these 4 stocks then, right? Because, myself, I'm like doing this from 8:30 in the morning, with most of our students that are inside our trading room early on before Fausto even hops on at 9 o'clock. We're scanning the market ourselves. We're calling out these trades like, AMC moving up or AAL moving up nicely with the airlines. So when you happen to see this live inside our trading room at like, even earlier, I say like early bird gets the money, we open up the room at 7:30. Right. So, you could really begin from there, but I would say at a minimum by 8:30 in the morning Eastern, you should be in the trading room. You should be scanning with us and prepping up your morning. You don't want to just open up your platform at 9:15, just look at the picks and then just, say, all right, well, let's just put a blindfold on and see what happens at 9:30. Right. In theory, if that's what you're doing, opening up your platform at 9:15 and just coming in late, that's essentially what you're doing right there, putting a blindfold on and just taking it off right at 9:30 and just saying, all right, well, let's just trade. We have money on the line here. We have to be prepped. So it's not just the scanning, it's the preparation of the chart. It's a matter of going through level 3, the ECN book, again, on the right-hand side for all of us streaming on social media, Facebook Live, YouTube. That's the TradeStation matrix there. Again, I always like to reiterate, that's comparable, if not a bit better, actually, than the NASDAQ total view. This is just integrated within the platform, makes it even simpler for us to show and demonstrate. So, if you don't have TradeStation, then I would seriously say then you need the NASDAQ total view. It's essential then in order to read the orders. All right, so with that in mind, what we're going to do is just quickly chart a few of these stocks that I was looking at, and then we'll see what happened after the market opened. We see what happened already, of course, but what we'll do is just kind of flip back on the pre-market. We'll look back on some of these trades, where they were trading in the pre-market, if there was any big volume that got filled, and essentially how that ended up reacting after the market opened at 9:30. So for instance, how about this? This is the AMC chart pre-market. And obviously, you see pretty much the same thing on the 5-minute chart, which is live. But if you're looking exclusively, and even better, how about this? I'm going to be a pain in the butt here. I'm going to do just that. There we go. So, you could just see the whole pre-market chart here from essentially like 5:30 heading into the market open 9:30. Are there any levels from the chart, folks, that are holding really well as support resistance? Just start with the chart. Anything holding well as a really strong bottom or top. And I don't mean that as a very low or high, like just like the high or the low. Let's look at rounded tops, rounded bottoms, just any consistencies between these price levels that are holding. Gary calling out 7 here in our chat board, and Wayne agreeing, saying it's holding strong under 7. What I say my entry was just before when I got out of my trade? It was like 7. Yeah. Yeah, 7 is a huge level. It's a whole number to begin, right? So as a whole number, you would assume for there to be a massive iceberg order, at that price in the pre-market and going into the market open. All right. So that definitely is a great setup, as I would phrase it. Just it's holding really well underneath there. It's not just one instance at 7:30 or after here, going into 8 o'clock. It's moving up to it, heading into the market open. But otherwise, yeah, it's just still holding under that price there, you could say. Alex and Tony and Wendy all agreeing that like 670-ish seems to be a pretty strong level. Yeah, held here going into 9 o'clock and 9:30. I'll keep the line there. We'll go into bookmap in a moment, as we would nickname level 4 even. But yeah, we'll keep a line there. And at the same time, hey, at the same time as I say 7 whole numbers are really strong levels, you would assume the same to be said off 50-cent, intervals, 650, 7, 750, 8, all of that. All right. And then here from the bottom, I guess you could say like 630-ish, 625-ish. Now, that will be pretty important. So actually, what we'll do now at this point, before we even go into the volume aspect of this all, let's go back a day. Let's go back to yesterday's trading, because we were following this yesterday, right? This was on our afternoon watch list. We were calling this, that we saw this live breakout over 630. We saw this live during the afternoon meeting. So for all of us streaming on social media, if you were there during the meeting, then you should remember this. If not, just go right back on our YouTube channel. It's probably like the second to last recording that we just did. The afternoon meeting from yesterday, that was back from February 22nd. We watched this live breakout over 620 and 625. I told you folks then, and I'll say here, that 620, and I was going to get to this anyway, but it's just very interesting anyway that you see this here. That 620 is a really strong level going into this morning. It was a breakout level heading into yesterday afternoon. It was both 620 and then $6.25, 2 massive iceberg orders that broke. And then later on, it popped above 650 here. So a large amount of this volume spike even after comes from 650. So yeah, let's just actually mark that up here too. I like to make these purple. I like to go purple, yellow, and then a light blue. You might think purple and yellow with Kobe Bryant, which would be a good explanation there. But I like the Miami Vice colors, honestly. I like the purple, the yellow, the light blue there. Color it how you want, folks, right? Just as long as it gives you a good ability to visualize these levels. So that's just personally how I have it charted on my other screen. So with that in mind, though, just let's go back to the pre-market here. We'll look at the charting once more. And this time, again, we're going to dig into the volume bars, because if we were saying that 620 and 625 are 2 huge levels from yesterday, and I think I just gave away the answer as I showed you the chart. I need to here. Give me a quick sec. There we go. So heading into the market open, you could see at least after 9 o'clock, there was a couple of big spikes of volume right here at 8:59, one right here at 9:04, essentially when it's bottoming out right off 670. So there had to have been a lot of selling at that time, you'd imagine. If it's a red bar, selling. It's a green bar here, perhaps buying off a certain price. So there's a lot going on here after 9 o'clock. This will give me a good time to just jump into Bookmap right now. I'll show you what the level 4 looked like heading into the market open. I know that Fausto often shows this when he does the morning meetings, of course, and we show this during class and Traders Talk here every week as well. So this is AMC, and this is what the level 4, the heat map, Bookmap looked like here. And I would say, if anything, well, this dot represents where we had the selling. We ended up seeing, not to say a market print, because there's no market orders in pre-market, but it's just to say we ended up seeing perhaps a dark pool print just off of 671, an 84,000 share fill specific to 671. Hey, dark pool or not, we call that big money, smart money, and we want to follow that, right? So how will that play in part as a level for this morning? That's what we have to ask ourselves. Well, the immediate reaction after is that the stock bounced off it, right? Ended up moving up. So that's a good sign. Perhaps that could once again be a support after the market opens. 671. It's pretty much right there. I'll move the line up here now. This is where I'd color it yellow. All right, so actually, bear with me for a quick second. I'm going to bring Bookmap back up again for this AMC trade, and we'll see what happens here, because the only thing left that I'm going to do at this point is just show you what was what we call the opening bell print. So this is what you would call a market on open transaction found on the time and sales program right here, right at the market open. So Bookmap, shows that again as a big dot. So that shows a 1.9 million share transaction. So in one print on the time and sales there was a print on the tape for 1.9 million shares at 6.99. Now that's not one person. That's a conglomerate of traders that are looking to have their orders filled at whatever the market price is at the open. But hey, for all of those shares traded at $6.99, that has to be a big level once again, right? Just like we were saying before at 671. So before I show you what happened at 9:30 and after, let me just plot that at 699. I mean, it's like right there at 7, but all right, cool. So after the market opened, what happened on this trade here? Well, within the first couple of minutes, it ended up kind of pulling back, kind of fell into no man's land here. I guess you could just say over 671. It ended up beginning to move back up and over 7. Now, here at Cyber Trading University, we typically say to wait the first 3 minutes, the first 5 minutes, especially as a new student. Once you get the grip of things, get the hang of things, and you make sure that you set your stops and manage your trades well, then it certainly could be advantageous to trade within that time. But even myself, I know that I'm going to still wait the first 1 to 2 minutes. I'm waiting to see the smoke and dust clear. So it's for me to tell you, unfortunately, I did miss this pop off of 7. If I set an order to buy over 7, there could have been a chance to where I would have gotten filled on that trade. I could have made a quick trade off a scalp, right? Now, a couple things for this morning. To where I said, me personally, right? I'm just speaking as a human being, because everybody goes through their own crap as a human being, right? It could be just, not feeling well. It could be family related stuff that's, taking you away from the market. It could be work related things, getting pulled into a meeting or having to go into your office last minute, stuff like that. Well, for this morning, I wasn't really feeling that great. And I think it was like too much coffee and too little food. I was saying that over the audio broadcast there. I felt like total crap. And I took some losses this morning too. I took them on AMC. I ended up taking them on AAL. But right away at the market open, not only was I feeling like total crap, my platform was freezing up on me right away at 9:30. So I couldn't have even set up that order anyway if I wanted to. There was a whole lot of, crap going on, as I phrase it, that, made me kind of feel wary about taking trades after the market opened, even though I ended up charting all of this myself, even though I ended up plotting this on my own chart. So it's for me to just say, like, even after the market opened, I did take a trade. It was on AMC. It was off of 7, but it wasn't here where my cursor is. When this ended up breaking below 7 and right back above 7, I bought right here at 7:02. That was my first entry of the day, or maybe my I think my second, if not my first. But I ended up jumping in right here off of 7, and at the time, it was a really good entry. Might not look like it afterwards, right? But every trade begins with the entry. So you could be there at the right place, just simply at the wrong time. You just have to realize that in advance, or in the moment, I should rather say. So, when this broke above 7, I jumped in. I set a stop right under 7. Notice the close on the bar, just so give the sequence here. It closed at 7:01. So, on the next bar, I got shaken out. So I ended up taking a 6-cent loss. I got out actually 6.96. I got filled. So on 1,000 shares, $60 loss. It sucks. It's not nearly a big loss in my opinion, but I just know that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So hopefully on the next trade, I'll look to make it back. But again, I'm not like feeling that great. My platform kind of crapping out on me. I don't want to take trades when my platform's kind of freezing up here and there. The reason my platform froze actually because I know I'm going to have someone probably message me like with TradeStation stuff. But regardless, I had an extra workspace up also going into the morning. So I didn't even realize that until once I saw my platform freeze up initially. So there was a lot going on my end there. So I ended up jumping in. Thankfully, I set my stop because otherwise I could have been taking a real butt kicking on this trade. So thankfully, I only took a 6-cent loss. It dropped all the way down towards that 671 line. Now, what happened here, though, after? Because, our whole underlying strategy at CTU is that we're looking to buy a stock directly after it breaks through a big level on the way up. So that meant for me, when this broke under 7 and then back over 7, that could have been a good entry. Obviously, it broke down. I got stopped out, but you could say the same to be said maybe off 671. What if, this breaks under 671, but then breaks right back above it? Maybe that could be the point where it bounces and moves back up sharply. As you could see, that clearly did not happen. It ended up testing 671. Ultimately, it built a bearish Fausto flag above the price, and then it snapped right down. So in fact, that would be like an incredible short opportunity. So that's why you don't want to try and catch the falling knife, folks, because if you're not able to set your stop in advance, if you're not quick enough, then you're going to take a real loss right away. So this was made for a fast drop right away to 650, broke below the level on the next bar and kept going. Well, look where essentially that stock bounced off of. Across the morning, where did this stock bounce off of, folks? Right off that 620 line, right? So, I mean, it dropped all the way to a low of probably like even 601. Right? So again, we're not trying to catch the falling knife. If you tried doing that at 671, you would have gotten killed. If you tried doing that at 650, you would have gotten killed. So you don't want to try and do that at every price level. You have to try and buy the stock directly after it breaks through the level on the way up. So that means even here, when it breaks below 625 and 620, it drops hard. But when it breaks back through these prices again, it holds above them. So that's the opportunity that you're looking to take. I personally did not take this trade after. I wish I could say I did. I was pretty wary of trading after, so I kind of put a pause on my trading after 10 o'clock, and I, unfortunately wasn't watching this at the time. So even looking at this in hindsight after, it just goes to show how you're planning ahead, how your prep in advance could lead you to take really good entries, and if you're there to watch it in the moment. I was watching AAL at the time, so I was trading that, making some money on that at least there. But, on AMC, I took a quick loss, ended up diving down much further, ended up bouncing perfectly right off around that 620 price. And just before, look what happened here. You could see it ended up moving all the way back, right? So all the way back up to 7. It broke above 7. Ended up being in and out on this trade for a little bit. I wanted a lot more than what I had here, so I only picked up like 5 cents on this trade from what I remember. Drop back down, so you want to make sure you get out in advance here if it's not going to break higher. And since it's been holding and teasing the level after, so I've been taking losses on this trade after here and there. -2, -3, and then since I put an order to buy right above 7, so I knew going into Traders Talk just before that this was teasing the breakout over 7. Like, even I was talking to one of our students, Jason. He was just saying on a private chat to me right before we started, he said, I have to jump on a call, say hello to AMC over 7 for me. It's been shaking me out all morning. Yeah, I've been taking a couple losses on it too, but finally get the right trade-off here, right? It popped above 7 finally once again. So for all of the buying that you're seeing off of 7, you're hoping for a move like this, but you can't hope and hold. That there's a difference between hoping and taking responsible trades and getting out in time, with a tiny loss or even a scratch, versus holding on for a long amount of time here. Like, imagine trying to buy off 7 and then holding on, drops down to 671, bounces back up. Folks, it's just not worth it. Your risk reward sucks if that's the case, because the question you have to ask yourself is, if you're going to risk 30 cents a share on this, are you going to definitely hold on to this as it moves up to 750, as it moves up to 760 or above? Do you know it's going to make that move? Or is it just going to top off around here? Or do you even hold on to this point? I mean, for you to hold on for a 30+ cent loss here as it moves back up, I would imagine a lot of us would just get out above 7 afterwards just to take the tiny profit after, pulling your hair out for so long here. So we try not to do this. We try not to get in and then hold. We end up getting in. We have to take the loss if need be. But you know what? We're there at the right place at the wrong time, because look at this thing now, right? Obviously, I wish I jumped back in this trade. So ultimately, what happened here is finally this 7 level, 699, 7, these two lines here, you're hoping that after it breaks above this resistance, this really strong resistance here throughout the morning, and after it runs from that price, a la here, the hope is to see it hold as support after. So as this comes down, look what happened. The same damn thing happened. It breaks right below 7. It holds under 7. It breaks right back above 7. And of course, a little shake after, but it moves right back on up on the following bar. So you don't want to try and buy on the way down. You're only going to get your butt kicked. I'm telling you. I've been there. I've done that. So, at some point in time, I don't remember the date, but, at some point in time, a number of years ago, I've had that, big light bulb turn on to where I always say that same line to you folks inside the trading room. That's why I sound like a wind-up doll at times. I say the same 2 or 3 lines, right? You want to buy a stock directly after it breaks through a big level on the way up. It's because I phrased that one day to myself, and it just hit me over the back of the head, theoretically, right? All right. Gary, just private message me that question about Bookmap, because I'll talk to you about that on the side. I'm not going to go over that as much here right now, but definitely once we finish up, just private chat that to me. Kennedy says you ate your lunch too late yesterday. Not good. Yeah, it's true. I have a weird schedule, Kennedy, because my days are filled with coaching sessions all throughout the morning. Initially, it was supposed to be one at 8 o'clock, but then I ended up moving that. But nonetheless, just been talking all morning, all day. Norman says my platform also crapped out on him this morning too. If you have too much on your screen, it's going to happen, regardless of your broker platform. There are some that require less usage on your computer, which makes it easier and simpler. TradeStation definitely requires a little bit more out of your computer compared to some other platforms. Runs a lot of data. So that's where I say you want to make sure that you don't have any extra workspaces of AMC up like I had. That's what froze me up, Norman. I was good yesterday and the day before. Well, Friday of last week, I should say. Randy says, will you smack me in the head and turn my light bulb on, please? So unfortunately, that doesn't come. And I should say, well, fortunately, I don't have to physically smack anyone over the head, Randy, for that. I'm a lover, not a fighter. So I would never do that anyway. But nonetheless, just that comes with time. And with time, I don't mean like, a couple months, it could be, but, for some, it might take longer. It might take a few months. It might take 5 to 6 months. It might take after you've trading stocks that have crazy spreads and very thin liquidity on the order book for you to say, all right, well, you know what? Let's just give it a shot on some of these, tighter spread ones like AMC. Like, that's just a very simple light bulb that turns on, right? Then there are others that turn on like, hey, probably shouldn't be trading after 10:30 in the morning anyway. 10:30, 11 o'clock, things tend to slow down often within the market. So those light bulbs are a little bit more simple to turn on compared to some others down the line, like false breakouts and sitting on your hands and waiting for trades to come to you. And from YouTube here, RJF, couple comments from him. He says, "Too much coffee? No such thing." I'll tell you, I just picked up this new one. I think it's called Death Wish coffee. It's the one that has like the most caffeine per cup. So I'm an expert in the field, but unfortunately this morning I probably had a little bit too much. He also says, I keep catching falling knives and then wonder why my fingers are cut. So I'll tell you, RJF, really quickly, because you're one of our attendees on YouTube during our meetings here pretty much every day, at least mine in the afternoon. So I'll see a lot of times that you make some call outs in the afternoons on trades like, the top percent gainers that made these big moves in pre-market, but then they pull back like, what's going on here with VBLT? This is getting a little bit of love here. This VBLT making a nice pop right now. So this is making its second wind. But I'll tell you, heading into the afternoon, should this kind of crap back down under 3, it's going to pull back even more. And heading into the afternoon, that's the type of trade I see get called out. And I'll say like, it's like likely to make a second like little squeeze up, but you don't want to try and follow a stock that's already been so heavily traded. It's, more often than not just exhausted at that point. The BBIG would be a good example for that too. You'll probably get a second little burst just like you saw in that last one, but it wouldn't shock me for that stock to pull right back down after. That's it. Like here, this is going nowhere yet. I'm sure it's going to make some sort of 20-cent pop heading into 230, but after that, these often just end up dumping back down after. All right, so we did AMC, right? And that was a really good trade, at least just heading into the late morning. They're off of 7. Took a while for that to come to fruition. So with the tiny losses that I took, thankfully the win that I just took there, the 17 cents, certainly wiped those -2, -3 from 7 out there, plus some, right? So, as long as you're able to minimize your losses and take, high percentage trades, I mean, trades just like we're talking about here, it will open up an opportunity for you to retain profit. And if I was following this a lot more here in the morning compared to AAL, I'd be hopeful to catch this off 620. That would have been a really sweet entry from there. All right, so let's jump to AAL pretty quick at least. My intention with this traders talk was to go over those 2 trades in particular, because it's not just because I'm trading these stocks. I'm making call outs on these trades, and alongside myself, Fausto is too. And with that, we're seeing our students take trades on these as well. So, we're just going over stocks that we're all collectively trading throughout the morning, and including this AAL here. Really quick, because you happen to see oftentimes, obviously here, and for all of us on social media, when you folks see me do the meeting in the afternoon, I love to have this Dow chart up. I'm going to remove it here for a second. I might re-add it, but I'm going to put a different symbol up here because at least with the airlines, there is a symbol that you could follow, an ETF that all of the airlines will collectively move with. So that's JETS, JETS. You could see it, essentially as a copy of what AAL did, right? So here's the thing. American Airlines is definitely more of a stock that will move with the market. AMC, you might get some sort of like, Reddit pop and drop or so forth. We've seen that make such a wacky move over the last couple of weeks. There's still a chance where that can go against the grain. But nonetheless, AAL is, a name brand stock, and it's one that's more likely to move with the markets entirely. And certainly just, you watch JETS here as your guide. But, going into the market open, it was kind of flat throughout pre-market. It was up in pre-market at first, dropped back down, moved back up. So here's what I want to focus on for this trade. We're going to go back to yesterday's chart first, just like we did on AMC. It's yesterday's levels that are still likely to be relevant to a degree for this morning. All right. So generally speaking, for all of us live inside the trading room, generally speaking, you don't need to try and squint your eyes and try and find like the perfect penny level that's holding well in the chart here. But generally speaking, what seems to be holding well as the top on this AAL trade? For those that were watching this yesterday, you could remember this, right? And a lot of us are saying at 21. At 21, generally, right? So the high of the day was above 21. Obviously, it broke above it. But look at the big spike of volume here, right? This huge spike. This is where you end up seeing, oh, not this one even. Not even that one. This one, yeah. This is where it breaks over 21. So clearly there was an iceberg order on the ask at 21 at that point, and it got filled. So we count that as buying at the time. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. All right, so 21, definitely a big level, and certainly going into the afternoon, it held it perfectly, near perfect. I would assume at the same time, any other whole number like 20 bucks, certainly to be a big level, right? I'll just, assume. And Carol says 1880. So 19 held in pre-market, I'll give you that. Looking at the pre-market chart from yesterday even. So again, whole number 19. I'm looking at the chart from yesterday right now on my screen. All right, so we'll chart this up more in a moment, folks. Like I'll really, dig more into this in just a moment. But let's just at least go back to the pre-market chart. We'll see what was holding well on the chart there. Again, we're just starting with the charts. Make it easy. So here, 21, holding picture perfect. So that's needless to be said even. I would say 1970, Carol, if that's what you were looking at from the pre-market chart from this morning. Well, 1970 here held early on. We'll see if that becomes, a bit of a level to watch after. I'll be honest, there's like not really one particular price point that's holding too well otherwise. The whole number off 21, 20. I'm sure $20.50, that will be a level to watch as well. So, I may as well just plot the line there too. It was holding above it pretty nicely here, and then a little chop heading into the morning. So let's look at Bookmap right now. This is where I dig into the volume. So there's a lot to go into with AAL. Just you could see here like 739, a big spike, a lot of buying there. And then after, really, as this is beginning more so to trend down heading into the morning, you see a big red bar here. A lot of selling came in, likely once it ended up moving off of 2050. So that's where it's easier for me to like go into level 4 here, Bookmap it, again, as we say, just, to kind of conserve time. All right, so again, I'm going to load up Bookmap. I'll just show you what happens here through the pre-market here on this AAL. Whole bunch of stuff going on. I got to rewind this a little bit here. So you could see, at least from Bookmap, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. So for anyone new to Bookmap, at least, these darker orange lines create resistance. So 21, naturally, you see a larger order on the ask. And then even at 21.10, roughly, there seems to be a pretty big order. And then 21.15-ish or 21.18. 20.50, there's your order on the bid. It got filled. And then, there's an order on the bid at 20. So that makes sense, right? These whole numbers, these 50-cent price levels, much more often than not have larger orders on the bid and the ask there. So, that's what you could assume even without looking at level 3 or even level 4 here. So otherwise, though, there just seems to be a lot of volume filled at 2080. There's a dot here, a 56,000 share print on the tape at 2080. There's one here at 2090. So what does that indicate? What does that mean? Well, to see such a big transaction on the tape, just one, 2 transactions of similar size. Well, the short-term reaction after was that it was kind of holding under 20 and 21 and 2090, but then from there it dropped off, right? So my imagination is that we saw a lot of selling, and then over time, it just ended up falling off pretty quick. So it leads you to ask, what happens if history repeats itself? What happens if after the market opens up, this moves with the market, ends up dropping off sharply? But what if we end up seeing 2080, 2075 act as a major resistance? What if it breaks above and then below that price like a false breakout? Well, that's your go-to. That's like an opportunity to try and short. Looks like there was, some buying, perhaps you can call it here. If the red's selling, then perhaps this could be buying. 2038, there's, a larger transaction there too. All right, well, when the market opens up, you end up seeing, as we said before for AMC, this opening bell print. I think it was a 618,000 share print on the tape. It was right at 2068. All right, so let me just do something really quick. I'm going to just pull this back for right now. We'll jump back to Bookmap in a moment. For anyone with TradeStation, if you don't know how to find the opening bell print really quick, I just want to show you. You could do it through time and sales. Watch it right at the market open. Notice, though, on the TradeStation matrix, look at the volume bars on the right side. I mean, there's a lot going on now. So, this is after, the full morning here, heading into the early afternoon even right now. But, by the time the market opened up, you see that big spike of volume at 2068? That's the opening bell print. You could also tell based on the thin green line right there. That thin green line right there at 2068. Quick little tip. All right, so let's just chart this up now at this point. I've got a bunch of stuff on this chart to begin with, but essentially what I'll do is I'll just draw a line, one at we'll just put it there at like 2075, I think it was at. That's where we had roughly where we had all that selling. I'll just put it even smack in the middle. And then the opening bell print we said was at 2068, we said in particular, right? So I'm just going to draw a line pretty much right there. All right, let's see what happens. Now we know what happened, of course, once the market opened. This dropped like a rock. Dropped all the way down right to my 19, right? That was the strong level we were saying just from yesterday that was holding into the afternoon. So why not put a line there? Well, look what happened. Broke below it, but essentially right when the airline sector and the ETF here, Jets made the bounce, AAL made the bounce. So, that's easy to point out here at this point, but, that's where I ended up jumping in. That's one of my best trades from today. So even though I was still down heading into Traders Talk, I was able to take a quick entry off of 19, I mean. I got out way too early, as you could see here as well, of course. I got out at 19.11. I only took 11 cents on this trade, or even like 10 cents, I think. But, this ended up dropping off as soon as the market opened up. I was looking for a bounce on this right away. So before I ended up taking that tiny win even, I did take a loss on this to begin. So at 1950, I tried taking my entry. I tried taking my entry at 1950. I ended up jumping in. It was pretty much right off of 1952. You could see it broke below 1950 on this bar. Look at the green spike. So clearly something happened there where we ended up seeing like a bunch of dark pools or market prints fill to buy off of 1950. So I thought it was a good time for me to get in right off of 1950 to buy. Well, literally as soon as I got in, it shook me out like on the next bar. I tried getting in again, popped over 1950 again. It moved up a little bit. I didn't get out in time because I wanted more, and it stopped me out. So that's where I said, this morning, even outside my platform freezing up on me, I was taking losses. Thank God I got out ahead of time because they just kept dropping, right? If I didn't get out where I did on AAL, it would have kept dropping all the way down to 1874 before it ultimately bounced. So it's easy to look at this in hindsight and say, well, yeah, it moved up afterwards with the market, so just hold on. If you're a swing trader listening to this right now, and I say that not to our traders here inside the room, to anyone on social media, Facebook Live and YouTube, if you're watching this as an investor, someone that's, buying and holding for a period of time, there's a big difference in strategy and there's a big difference in volatility with these trades. So, this AAL trade's completely dropping off with the market. You certainly don't want to try and buy and hold here because you don't know what's going to happen down the line. So it's just to say, for the amount of risk that you'd be having there, are you guaranteed to be doubling your risk as your reward or more? Typically I strive for like a 2-to-1 reward risk ratio. So that's where I say, like, these losses, I have no problem taking a tiny loss and then getting in on the same trade right away after, or maybe a couple minutes later, and seeing if it makes that move. And if it fails me there, then all right, it sucks. But you know what, I have to move on. Maybe watch the stock still, but if it keeps dropping, I'm not going to catch the falling knife and try and buy on the bid. I'm going to try and repeat the process. Buy right after it breaks through the level on the way up. So it's easy to say, but once it broke under and over 19, that's where I jumped in. If I held on, I would have been doing really well on that trade, right? Certainly would have turned my whole morning around, and heading into Trader's Talk, I'd be saying, hey, I had a pretty good morning, folks, even with my platform crapping out on me. Because at this point, I was unfrozen, so I was good to go at that point, but I just left a lot of money on the table. Jerry asking what my ratio is. I strive for a 2-to-1, Jerry. You get some educators out there that say, oh, look for a 4-to-1 reward risk ratio. It's very, the bigger reward risk that you strive for, the harder it is for you to achieve. So if you're doing a 1-to-2 reward risk ratio, if you're risking, 20 cents a share in order to make 10, well, the probability of you achieving that is a lot higher compared to you risking 20 cents to strive to make $1. What if it doesn't hit $1? Like, what if, it doesn't make that dollar per share target? You don't control the stock. Don't let the stock control you. That's always my motto. If I held on here tonight from 1950, I'd be looking like a real asshole. Like, to put it like as bluntly as possible. And if that offends anyone, I apologize, certainly. But I like to kind of like just put it bluntly at points, just to crack some jokes. But really, like, on 1,000 shares, it's a lot of money I'd be risking. So am I likely to run this all the way back up? Probably not, because of how much I'd be down. I'd be more fearful of it dropping back down, so I'd be more keen to just get out with a tiny profit. So if I'm getting out with a tiny profit anyway, then why not just take a tiny loss at first and then get back in later on? Reduce the risk. All right, so what I want to do right now, let's see, where am I at? Where am I at here with my agenda? What I want to point out, really, I mean, long story short, is that I didn't have the hottest morning. I was down going into Trader's Talk, I told you. It's down $150. Not a lot, in my opinion. I was up, well from last week. So, just take it trade by trade. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But it is just to say exactly that. Like, AMC is moving right now. That stock, like, is still going. Like, again, if I held on, great. But it just goes to show that I took the trade to begin with, and this put me over, right? So just because you had a crappy morning, even if your platform froze up on you like it did mine, you're able to recover. But there's a process behind it, though. It's just easy for me to say, oh, well, just follow the strategy. Oh, just only look to buy a stock directly after it breaks through a big level going up. It's hard to take emotion out of trading and just, hear myself or Fausto call out a stock, and you just say, oh, well, shoot, let me just jump right in right now. And you totally disregard strategy. Or you might have a tough trade like this. This thing was a tough trade off 7. Took a couple losses at first. So that's where I say, just, if you follow the stock and watch it move throughout the morning, it didn't break lower. If this stock isn't going to break lower, then there's only one other way it's going to go. All right, well, if it doesn't break out over 7 here, I won't enter again. But for all of the buying that we had off of 7, and I even mean that from, pre-market, again, there's a reason why I was watching AMC into the morning. It's because, it was moving up nicely heading into the open. It held support, moving back up. We were seeing buying off of 7 in pre-market as a prelude. So I was hopeful for this move. Just took a while for it to come to fruition. So that's where I say I don't want to like get stuck in these trades and hold on, but I'll take these same trades over and over if it gives me the opportunity to, because I damn well know once we happen to see this really begin to pop, it'll pay off. I just don't want to hold on for, too long to just wipe out that whole profit to begin with. All right, there we go. Jason joining us once again here. He says, my practice is to hear the call out, look at the 5-minute chart and find my levels, then act. I miss some, but higher win percentage doing that. That's all that matters. The money's never yours until you press close anyway. And even before that, you have to press buy or short to enter the trade to begin. So you want to just make sure that you're placing yourself in scenarios and in environments that give you a much higher opportunity or percentage, right, Jason? Higher win percentage of making money than not. This breakout over 7 was just inevitable. I sound like Thanos saying that, right? If anyone follows all that Marvel stuff, yeah. But nonetheless, just look at this thing now. So let me jump to actually, Jason. I want to jump to what you were asking me from earlier because you had a question going into Traders Talk. I want to answer it, though, just before we finish up. Current time, 11:56, folks. So for anyone that wrote me through email this morning regarding Traders Talk questions for this morning, if I did not answer your question just as we were going over these trades, I mean, you may have had just a general question about how we found stocks or how you would look to enter a trade, what you would watch for. So, if I answered your question just in regards to my analysis of AMC and AAL, great. For anyone else, though, if I didn't answer your question through email, I'm going to just get back to it later on today. I'll write you back later on once the market closes. All right, but I want to go over Jason's question here, and then we'll finish up. So Jason was just asking, like, hey, what do you do when you get distracted for a minute, and then you miss an entry, and then you see that the stock has moved through my entry point without me? And Jason basically said that he believes that if I really like the level, then I would set a stop limit order to get in, maybe with an OSO with a stop attached. So I wrote back to him and I just said, I gave my answer to him right off the bat, but then I'll say to you folks here what I said. I said that I don't personally use OSO orders. I'm not really as much of a fan of them. I just, from my experience, and I'm just speaking me as a person, but, I just found that it took a little extra setup and that took time away from me setting up entries on trades otherwise, and I missed a lot of stuff by setting up the OSO to begin with. So, that's just my own personal experience. So, if you're very good with using OSOs, then continue to use them. But just at least, though, Jason's right. I mean, I set a stop limit order to buy over 7. That's how I entered the trade to begin. So I'd like the level enough to just say, hey, I got shaken out a couple times here, but the more often that it holds higher lows and moves up, it's not just going to flatten out under 7 the whole day. So unless if there's a huge iceberg order above 7 acting as a new resistance, which there wasn't here, it was only a matter of time. So yeah, I set a stop limit order to enter the trade, Jason. But even without that, like, let's just say that I started Traders Talk and I didn't set the stop to get in. What if I turned over to this and it was at 7:11? Well, what do I do? So I'm going to stay true to my levels, right? Like, I have to hope that this ends up giving me an opportunity to get back in from around 7. But otherwise, I have to ask what the next level is ahead from there. Now, if I really, let's see if I had this on my other screen here, because we didn't do this from when we were kind of plotting AMC at least. But on my other screen, my platform that I'm trading off of, because I'm doing this remotely through LogMeIn, that's how I'm streaming everything. But I want to see if there's any other line I had over 7 here on my screen, or even 750. I drew a line at 750, which you don't see here. So clearly this was holding really well under 750 throughout the morning. And just right now it popped above it. But 750 is your next iceberg resistance, but there was nothing in between here that I had as a level in advance. So just pointing that out. So that's where I'll say, let's look at Bookmap one more time, because we have to ask, like, hey, what is the next level on AMC? Because there has to be something in between 7 and 750 for me to enter off of if this doesn't give me an ability to enter off of 7. in theory, this did give me an ability to enter off of 7, even if I ended up missing the pop. It ended up pulling back down to 7 as a support, ended up holding it really well, and then it moved back up nicely, right? That was right off of like 11:30 Eastern. So let's just look at Bookmap here, Jason, and like I'll just use this as a one-off example, but I'll be able to answer that here. So let's see. So here's 7 getting tested, right? This is right before we started. So it was filling the level to begin. And then finally, once it broke, that's where I got in. So that's where I set the stop. But let's say if I missed that. Well, it did pull back down, right? We were talking about this just before. Down to 7. It broke under 7 and back over 7. So if you missed the pop, it did give you opportunity to get back in as it was treated as support. Now, otherwise, though, if we're just looking at this, there's 2 things that stand out to me in between 7 and 750. It's just this top here at 720. There's like an order on the ask, maybe like a minor resistance there. But there seems to be a print on the tape at 710. There seems to be like a 52,000 share fill on the tape. So that's a transaction that's already completed. It's not to say I would rather focus on that, but I have to put equal significance to that compared to 720. So it's just to say, hey, what if this is holding well under 710 after? Which it is here. Goes to show it's holding pretty well as resistance. So that's even after it bounced off a 7 as support. There's like plenty of opportunity to get into this trade. Off of 7, and then from there, seemingly 710, because it was holding under that price when it was beginning to bounce back up from 7. We had that big red dot on that Bookmap program. That was a big transaction on the tape. So that created a minor resistance, minor level in its own right. And from there, it built a Fausto flag under, it popped it and squeezed much higher. All right, last one here from Taz. We got to finish up, though. I got to jump onto a call here very shortly. Actually, a little late here. Riot, you saw a quote for about 5 minutes that he's never seen before. The order on the ask was $3.50 below the bid. That might just be like a glitch, unfortunately, on TradeStation. So I know that you're asking about that at the market open, Taz, or like within the first few minutes of the open there. But was it on Bookmap or was it on level 2 or level 3? You told me level 2. This is not often, but I've seen things of that nature happen where on TradeStation, you'll tend to see some funkiness go on the matrix, but you're seeing all of the prints on the tape in coordinates with what's actually being filled. So that's where you say you should go by what you see on the time and sales, because that's going to show you a running series of transactions that are getting filled. All right, from Jill, she's asking what a Fausto flag is. So, Jill, that's something that we talk a lot more about inside our Phase 1 stock course. We just did that class, if I'm not mistaken. We just did that back last week. We ended up talking about different chart patterns. So that was actually just back on Friday from this past week, the 19th. We talked about that in Phase 1, Lesson 3. We talked about different charting patterns like Fausto flag, pennant, head and shoulders. So that's where I have a much greater outlet and ability to talk about those patterns. It's basically a consolidation pattern that leads to a potential breakout or breakdown. All right, folks, running a little over time right now, so I'm going to finish up for the meantime here. So for anyone on social media, Facebook Live and YouTube, I hope that you enjoyed. I'll check back with you folks later on this afternoon at 2:30 Eastern time with our afternoon meeting. So if you'd like to learn more, as always, just make sure that you like, subscribe, notify right on our YouTube channel, that being youtube.com/cybertradingu. Make sure that you go to the link right below on the banner if you're interested in joining all of us inside the trading room. Currently, there's 130 of us live. Otherwise, though, any miscellaneous questions, feel free to ask me. You could send a question right over to my email address, josh@ctutrading.com. Once again, my name is Josh Levitan. It was great speaking with you folks here today. I look forward to talking to you later on today, of course, like I just said, but we'll we'll do this once again, later on throughout the year, a couple times throughout this year. We'll look to hop on, stream socially, and do these Traders Talk workshops for you. All right. For all of us live inside the trading room, as always, we'll have this recording of Traders Talk on your dashboard. If not by tonight, then by tomorrow morning. And then we'll just kind of keep going here. We'll scan the market, see what else is out there. All right. Take care.